Since this is Hezekiah's tunnel, I want to take just a couple of minutes and read a little bit of Scripture to put this in context. Hezekiah gets more biblical print in the Old Testament. There's only one king that took up more pages of Scripture, and that was Solomon than Hezekiah. So Hezekiah was a very, very significant person. And we certainly don't have time to go through all that Kings and Chronicles says, but just to set the context, his father, Ahaz, was one of the most wicked that there was. And let me just read the last portion of 2 Chronicles 28, where it sort of summarizes King Ahaz, Hezekiah's father, and then you'll see the context that he comes into. Ahaz gathered together the furnishings from the temple of God, took them away. He shut the door of the Lord's temple, set up altars at every street corner in Jerusalem. In every town in Judah he built high places to burn sacrifices to other gods and provoke the Lord, the God of his fathers, to anger. And so Hezekiah's father was guilty of all kinds of idolatry and apostasy, even child sacrifice. And it's in that kind of context he desecrated the temple, the most holy place, beyond imagination to the Jewish people. And then the Bible said that Ahaz rested with his fathers and was buried in the city of Jerusalem, but he was not placed in the tombs of the kings of Israel, and Hezekiah, his son, took his place. Now, Hezekiah was 25 years old when he followed his father onto the throne, and he ruled for 29 years. Very, very significant. Now, one of the most important things that he started his reign with, he purified the temple. He reestablished the Levitical priesthood and had them all purified, and then had them go in and purify the temple. And it took a long time to get out every vestige of apostasy that had built up and been sort of consummated during the time of his father Ahaz. And so he first of all purified the temple and restored the Levitical priesthood and so forth. And then in 2 Chronicles chapter 30, we read that for a long, long time there had not been any Passovers. We're here at Passover time. And so after he purified the temple, which was necessary, then he celebrated with the people the first Passover that had taken place in a long time. And he sent out a message not only to the southern kingdom, but even to the northern kingdom, to invite everybody to the Passover. The plan seemed right both to the king and to the whole assembly. They decided to send a proclamation throughout Israel. Now listen to this, from Dan to Beersheba. And that's been the tour that we have been on. And so when he said, send out a proclamation to all of Israel, you summarize that by saying, from Dan in the north to Beersheba in the south. And we have done that, calling the people to come to Jerusalem and celebrate the Passover to the Lord. And then the Passover, as we will see in our continued study, the Passover is immediately followed by 7 days, the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And they were so excited that they had the week-long Feast of Unleavened Bread and then extended it another 7 days. So they're sort of making up, I guess, for lost time. And so it was very, very significant, this man's leadership, what he did in purifying the temple, reestablishing Passover, unifying the people. And God tremendously prospered him, but as is oftentimes the case, his prosperity resulted in pride. And a delegation came, and one other thing even before this, Sennacherib, who was the king of Assyria, basically gave a threat against him, and he said, we're going to wipe you off the face of the earth. You know the story, how the angel of the Lord, after a long series of encounters between the emissaries, the angel of the Lord went into the camp of the Assyrians and killed in one night 185,000 Assyrians. And as a result of that, Hezekiah's reign and the city of Jerusalem was spared at this particular time. And then Hezekiah became rather proudful. And in spite of what God had done, you know how he became sick. He was about to die. The prophet Isaiah came to him and basically said, get your life in order because you're going to die. Hezekiah turned his face to the wall, wept bitterly. God heard his prayer. God gave him an extension of 15 years. Now, that's not always a blessing, because tragically, during that 15-year extension, Hezekiah did some backsliding and pride got the best of him. The Babylonians came up. He showed them all of his wealth, all of his treasure, all of his temple. And again, God sent through the prophet and said, because you have done this, all that you have exposed will one day be taken by the enemies. And so Hezekiah, and we're summarizing 29 years of reign, but one of the most significant kings. And he was one of those that Scriptures speak of. And Hezekiah did what was right, as his father David had done. David was the high water mark, the man after God's own heart. Now we'll conclude with this verse, and then we'll wade in the water, and I'll start singing soprano. Okay, we're at 2 Chronicles 32, beginning at verse 30. It was Hezekiah who blocked the upper outlet of the Gihon spring and channeled the water down to the west side of the city of David. He succeeded in everything that he undertook to do. So, since he dug the channel, let's go walk it. We're headed down into the entrance of Hezekiah's tunnel. You can hear the water rushing through. Fortunately, it does not look at this point too awfully high. We're all going to be singing soprano very shortly. I did, and it just went. Wow.
You're just too exciting.
All right, guys, we're getting to a low point, so tall people, watch your heads.
All right.
You gonna get back through?
Another hole. Beautiful Zion.
We're marching upward to Zion, the beautiful city of God.
We're marching
To Zion, beautiful, beautiful Zion. We're marching upward to Zion, the beautiful city of God.
there. Whoopee!
Is the bus clear? Hello, Jose.
Hello, Joe.
We can shorts out the toes. Really? And the rest of us.
We've been digging for rocks.
All right, we have all made it to Hezekiah's. Not the problem.